Hi, this is Fred Migliore along with Steve Matteo. I am the host of FM Odyssey, and Steve is my co-producer. But Steve, why don't you go through the rambling list of all the journalistic, is that a word, journalistic? I'm talking to a journalist and I don't know what I'm saying, of the things that you've done. And so like, they're like, who the hell is this guy? You know, we ain't
Who
started.
are those guys?
Yes,
Which was one of the taglines in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
yeah.
And then the New Riders of the Purple Sage did an album, and that's what they called the album. So there's a little piece of trivia that only someone who spends all their time listening to music and writing about it would know. I mean, the main thing I do these days is I contribute to the Vinyl District. I'm a contributing editor. And over the years, I've written for the New York Times, for Rolling Stone, Spin, Newsday, Salon, Interview, New York Magazine, Time Out New York, the usual suspects, Crawdaddy. I have two books out on the Beatles. The most recent one, Act Naturally, The Beatles on Film. The Let It Be book is part of the 33 and a third series. And my first book was a biography of Bob Dylan called Dylan. How do you like that? And Judy Collins did the forward. I don't know how that came about, but
Pays to know people, doesn't it,
it
Steve?
sure does.
Anyway, so in this episode of whatever we're calling this, we haven't figured that out yet. But more importantly, it's just to get you information that might be helpful for you. So you might have heard of this series. Technology is always changing, and you might have heard of this series called the UHQR series that this company in Salina, Kansas puts out, and a whole bunch of different titles. And basically, UHQR stands for ultra high. What is it, Steve? Ultra high recording. I have to write this down because I can't do the
We don't
UH.
even remember. There's so many acronyms. We can't
Yeah,
remember them all.
ultra UH.
They sound really good. I mean, the basic thing is
Okay,
what they do
ultra high
is
quality recording.
that's
You're
it.
right. I had to write the UHQR thing down. So, but anyway, so what they do is they actually take albums and they take the original analog masters of them. Bernie Grundman does a lot of stuff with them as well, and they recut these things into 45 RPM speed. So that means that every 33 and a third album that you remember and know and love is now 45. So there's two discs in each set to encompass an entire album. And they use really incredible technology beyond speeding it up to 45 RPM. And the idea of speeding it up for 45 RPM is that there's less grooves on one side. So the grooves are deeper. The stylus is able to get in there. They're able to put more information into those grooves when they press them, and thus you have far better fidelity. So that's kind of what they do. And they do all of this in Salina, Kansas. I mean, they do everything from making the lacquers to pressing them. They only do a certain amount of numbers, of
They're limited
prints.
edition.
Yeah, limited editions, and they only will use the lacquers for so many pressings, so that you're bound to get a really good quality recording of it. So, but here's the asterisk that you need to know is that if you've heard about this series, whether it's Steely Dan catalog or it's the other things that they have, please put your ego aside and make sure that you're aware of what your audio system is capable of doing. Because these records are not inexpensive. They're $150 a piece, and that's the Steely Dan ones that we're going to talk about. The other ones that they have as part of the 45 RPM that does the same process are a little bit cheaper, but they're $60. So you want to make sure that your audio system is going to be able to replicate or reproduce what they're giving you. Because if it's not, that's what I mean by putting your ego aside. If you got to say, well, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to really be able to hear the difference on the sound system that I have. But for those of you who can, glad you showed up, because
Yes.
today we're going to talk about some of the UHQR Steely Dan catalog versions. And Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about how they
Yeah,
kind of came about to do this
sure.
series?
And you know what might be a good idea is while I'm talking and showing a few things here, it might be good for you to hold the first one up that we're going to talk about. And if you, I don't know if you can do this, is maybe take it out and show people physically what
Okay.
what you're getting,
I need like
I
five
know it's
sets.
expensive, but and so Fred's just going to step away there. So the first one, obviously, we're going to hear
No,
is
no,
it
no,
Can't Buy
no.
a Thrill? No, we're going to. I'm sorry, that's right. It's Countdown to Ecstasy. I
Right.
forgot. We did this. This will be the third time we've tried to do this. The first one we're going to listen to is Countdown to Ecstasy, which is
Right.
actually the group's second album.
Hmm.
Okay, and this is very much when they were still really a band. There's a guy named Denny Diaz, who was the guitar player, who was like he was a permanent member of the group. And on this particular release, we also have Jim Hodder on drums and Jeff Skunk Baxter. And Jeff also played with the Doobie Brothers. And they were very much, a real band at this point. They didn't, later on, they would become something very different. And just to show you how into the studio and recording these guys are, the back, if you can see this, again, sorry for the glare, if you can see the back cover here, I mean, these guys look pretty happy in that recording studio. You see Jeff Baxter, he's got his feet up on that console right there. And I mean, these guys were into sound. And I guess it was the main people that worked with them on almost every album, I believe, was the producer was Gary Katz and the engineer was Roger Nichols. And they referred to him as Roger the Immortal Nichols.
There you
So,
go.
you know. So
Okay.
Fred, can you take
So,
out and
so
also
this is the is that glaring too
yeah, it's
much
glaring quite a bit. That's better. Yeah.
right
So
there?
people can generally see what it's all
Right,
about.
right. So it's this big box, see, like this, and then this comes out like this.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, and then you put this over here, and there's a lot of stuff. You need a lot of hands for these things.
Yeah.
Oh,
If you could just maybe take out one of the albums and maybe,
well, yeah, and I mean, you get this, this Steely Dan Countdown to Ecstasy insert that, has all of the credits and things on it, that were into the record. Donald Fagen did the liner notes on all of these for the UHQR series. They give you the record cover, which in this case is a gatefold.
oh,
Okay,
that's nice. Was
so
the original, was it a gatefold?
no.
No. Okay.
So
Yeah.
this
The
is a
one I have is not it's not a gatefold. It's
so
just,
this is a gatefold that has. I'm trying to see if you can see that at all. Can you
okay.
see
Yeah.
that?
It's got some, it looks like it's got the lyrics and liner
Yep.
notes
It
and
has the lyrics in it, and it also has the two sides so that you have 245 RPM records. So you have two sides of the gatefold for each one of those to get into.
okay.
Then you get all of this stuff, technical specifications. And this is how they make it and how they made the record. And it's like this little booklet that's kind of amazing that kind of goes into, can you see that or is it
Yeah,
glaring?
no, that I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. And the technical specification manual is on the front, how they do it. On the back, there's pictures of the people that actually cut the record for you.
Yeah.
So you could see them. And then you go to the actual recordings, which are done this way. And there's two albums in each one, and each one is a 45 RPM. Now, the only downside to this, Steve, is that if you're like sitting down and grooving, you got to get up every
Yeah.
10 minutes or so, because with 45 RPM, the whole idea is to not put so much information on one side like they would do with a 33 and a third. Now, my humble opinion, because I'm going to show you some of the other ones, the Countdown to Ecstasy to me has the finest fidelity out of all of them. And the Asia one that they redid sounds absolutely spectacular. Now, don't get me wrong, you're going to hear instruments on these songs that you never knew were there before. And we refer to being able to hear that as a sound stage. And so much of what you hear on recordings now is so compressed that you can't, it just sounds all the instruments sound very, very muffled because of compression that they use on it. But on these records, the sound stage is so wide that you're hearing all kinds of little instruments and nuances that you never knew were in these songs before, that really give you the impression like, wow, it's taken us 50 years and a little bit longer to be able to have technology catch up to us now, to where we can actually finally hear the way that these guys heard it when they did it in the studio.
Yeah.
So Countdown to Ecstasy is my favorite as far as sound quality. They're all right up there. And when I say Countdown to Ecstasy is like here, and is here, and the other ones are kind of just around that. But this one to me stands out. I love the warm, fuzzy sound that it has to it. So
Well,
anyway, so that's the first one that I wanted to talk about.
okay.
So
I
the
mean,
next, did you want to say something or?
well, I just to put things in perspective. So, to understand, you know, these albums we had bought over all these years is there's the recording, okay? And then there's the mixing and the mastering, the mastering most important. And then there's the copy, the vinyl pressing that you get. Now, when these albums were originally done, the recording was fantastic, okay? The mastering and the mixing was fantastic, but the pressings of these, particularly American records, and particularly Steely Dan albums, which were ABC or MCA, were just not very good, unfortunately. So, so what you're getting here is you're finally getting a really good quality pressing, and they've been remastered, to sound the best and take advantage of the current, ability that people have to replay this stuff. One of the problems that would happen more in the 60s and the 70s is, and this happened with the Beatles, with Led Zeppelin, where these records, when they did the original um, mastering of them, they were too hot, and people would take the records home and play them on their turntables, and the tone arms would literally fly off the records. So, that is obviously not a problem anymore. So you're really hearing these for the first time in the way that they're really meant to be heard, because the original recordings of these were about as good as it can get. So we're going to skip Pretzel Logic. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes, we are. I
Okay, so we're going to go to Katie Lied next.
Yes, we're going to go to Katie Lied, and I think what Steve said here's a perfect example of that issue, and the combination this time when Katie Lied was came out in, I believe it was 1975, is that the problem is that in addition to the shitty pressings that ABC Dunhill, whatever they were, had, there were also technical issues with this in the studio because Donald Fagen and Walter Becker were using a new noise reduction system that they had never used. It was brand new. And that caused so many issues with this, and it basically messed up this record a lot in terms of the sound quality of it. And they have tried to reissue it over the years. They've tried to clean it up the best way that they can. But they finally went back with this UHQR series from Acoustic Sounds. And they went back to the bare bones of all of this. And you're going to hear the best sounding recording of this record that's ever been made before. So that's really, really important to know when you're thinking about, which ones of these to get. So this is, like I said, this is the Katie Lied, and I showed you before. I'm not going to go through having to borrow five hands to take this all apart.
Yeah, no, I don't. I think we did it once. It's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. So that's what we've got here. So
Yeah,
this one falls in the category of, depending on what you like. The Katie Lied was always a favorite of mine, and I think this is a really outstanding. They did a really great job on this, and people were wondering, Steve, for quite a while. How are they going to do this? How are they going to handle Katie Lied? Because everybody that was a Steely Dan nut or an audiophile knew how badly this was recorded and how badly it sounded when it was released. So
yeah.
good news
And
for them.
it's such a shame too, because you can see on the back here, you probably can't. This whole thing here is a description about how they recorded it, the equipment. That's how into this stuff that these guys were. I mean, they were
Well,
really into the studio, and just there's some other players on this one. Denny Diaz is still there, but people like Jeff Porcaro are on here, Michael McDonald. I mean, the list of people that play on this record. Dean Parks, Elliot Randall, Hugh McCracken, Larry Carlton, Michael O'Marty, and David Paich, Chuck Rainey, Wilton Fell. I mean, I could just go on and on. The people that they got. This is when they were really getting into this idea of It's almost like they were like film directors and they're casting a film. And so you play that part and you play that part. It's not like a band, you know. Now, some people didn't like that. You know, personally, you and I, we love this stuff, you
Right,
know.
right. So the next one that we're going to talk about is the one that came out right after um, Katie lied, which is called the Royal Scam. One of my, it's like trying to pick a favorite Steely Dan album is like trying to pick your favorite child. And this one was the one that I thought was among the very, very best that they ever made. And at this point, they were beginning to go through that transition of being a band to more than, well, I'll put it to you this way. On the liner notes for either this one or Asia, which is the album that came out after this, I was reading, I told you that Donald Fagen wrote all the liner notes for this entire series of records from Acoustic Sounds. And he said, at this point, he said, the studio became our bitch. And that's kind of sums it all up because that's what they spent all of their time doing. And Steve, one of the things I really, really liked about this record, especially this version of it, the UHQR, is now that they're beginning to do all kinds of layering and stuff in the studio, making themselves more of, studio kind of band with all these different players that they brought in to do parts, you can really, really now hear the layers of the onion on this album in terms of all the stuff that was going on in these songs. And I remember I had a listening party at my house a few weeks ago for this record, and one of the participants, after it was over, said, "Man, there was a lot going on in that song that I never heard before." So I love this record, and I love the way that this sounds. The sound quality of it is just amazing. And between me and you, Steve, when they said that they were going to redo this whole series, they didn't release them all at once. They did the first Steely Dan, and then 3 or 4 months later, they released, the second one, and then they kind of did them out of order. And, I was like, great, the Royal Scam's coming up next. And then they ended up putting out Asia instead. So I've been waiting for bated breath for this to come out, and believe it or not, out of all 7 of their studio albums, this was the one that I had to wait for the very end because this was the last one that they had released.
Yeah. You have to remember too that like people did have, good stereos at this point, like the Royal Scam, it's 1976. But still a lot of this, people heard it on FM radio. And of course on FM, everything is compressed. And a lot of people maybe were even listening in their cars on these tiny little speakers. So
Like they are now on their phones.
right, like they are now, like everything is going completely backwards. So it's always hard to sort of emulate what what people were listening to in the studio. And I mean, that's why in the 70s, you started seeing these companies making audio equipment for consumers, kind of based on, well, what are they using in studios? Or what are they using as far as sound reinforcement, on the road? Like the Grateful Dead at their peak when they did their wall of sound, they were literally using Macintosh amps and JBL speakers. And when people heard that, they're like, well, that's what I'm going to go buy. Now that's
Right.
of course live sound. But I mean, you remember all the equipment, Altec speakers. I mean, they were used in a lot of recording studios.
Right.
So
And a lot of
people
the
wanted the same equipment.
Right. And a lot of the technology, even in the early 70s, and I think it was 72 or 73, Columbia came out with their quadraphonic record albums, the SQ series, and Warner Brothers came out with their version of quadraphonic 2, which required a piece of equipment that I think was called a CD4 demodulator. So the technology was beginning in the early 70s to realize that, how do we give our audience, like the consumer, a better way of hearing this? But like I said, it ultimately took 50 years before the technology caught up to where you can hear a lot of this. Now, the next Steely Dan album that I really like on the UHQR series from Acoustic Sounds is Asia. And Asia was really well recorded. And the bottom line is with these recordings on anything that you're doing on a UHQR thing like Acoustic Sounds is, you're only going to get as good as what the original tape sounded like. So if you think about it, Asia now is later on in the 70s as technology is continuing. Donald Fagen and Walter Becker were now, like, they said they made the studio their bitch, and that's all they did. And if you look at all of the people that tried out, let's put it that way, tried out to be musicians on Asia, it was mind-boggling, and the stories exist to this very day of how many of these very famous artists were really, really pissed off, and some of them walked out because they were asked to do their piece like several times, and if they didn't like the way that it sounded, Donald and Walter, they would just ask them to leave, and they'd bring in the next guitarist or the next person. And this record took a really, really long time for them to produce, but the sound quality that they were working with on the original masters was amazing, and thus on the UHQR version of this, it's just spectacular. I mean,
You
you
don't
knew
have
it
that with
sound,
me here right
yeah,
now.
yeah, and you knew that that record sounded a lot different when it came out, but that's the one that I would probably suggest as the one that you want to do the dog and pony with. If I have people over, it's like, let's put on Asia, let's watch their faces when they listen to this.
Right. It's
Because a
it's
lot of,
what used to call, like a test record. Like if
Mhm.
you walked into an audio shop and you wanted to buy something, and
Mhm.
you were like, okay, let's hear what this and this and this sound like. That
Right,
turntable, those speakers, and that amplifier. This would be a go-to right away, Asia,
right.
the sound quality. It's really funny. The first time that I actually heard this album, I was working at my college radio station, and there was somebody there who was also working at a commercial radio station, and he had a copy of it when it was first released, and he played it in the studio in our radio station, and played it, put it right on the air. And so that was the first time that I got to hear it in this, great room with great speakers and, beautiful turntable and, beautiful board and everything. So this is an original copy. I got this when it came out. This is definitely an original, and I've taken care of it. It does sound great. There's no question about it. This is maybe one of the most reissued records in history. It has come out over and over again in so many different formats from so many different audiophile companies. I mean, the 70s was the era of the album.
Right.
The
And the
60s was innovation. The 70s was the decade.
right. And the UHQR series is, out of all the reissues that Steve just talked about for Asia, this UHQR version is absolutely the best of anything that they've ever put out since the original album came out. We're getting short on time, but I want to get to the last one, which is the last album from Steely Dan, at least in their first incarnation, and this is Gaucho, which came out in 1980. And the sound quality on this is even more spectacular. And the time that they were spending in the studio going through one musician after another, just to play a lick until they got the right guy to sound the way that they wanted to, is just stunning to be able to hear this. We were talking earlier about soundstage and how wide open you can hear the instruments breathing. That's when you know that you've got a great recording of something, when it sounds like they're in the same room with you. And that's kind of how this record works. So, in terms of the UHQR series, there's Steely Dan ones, like I said, that are a bit pricey in the 150 range for this. But it was when I bought the first one, Steve, I had, I'm trying to remember which one was the first one that I had gotten. I can't remember which one it was. Oh, Gaucho was the first one I had actually gotten. And before I played it, I just had this buyer's remorse, like really terribly. Like, oh my God, I've never spent $150 on a record before. What's wrong with me? Like, do I need therapy or
There's
something?
nothing wrong with you, Fred.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but when I finished listening to it, I had a grin on my face that was from ear to ear. And I just remember thinking, how do I get the rest of these now? I had never heard anything in my studio on my sound system that ever sounded this great. And my speakers were smiling after this because they didn't either. So, but my point was that I was trying to make is that there are other UHQRs that Acoustic Sounds has out, and they're in the $60 range. In fact, we were going to do our little thing here that we did the last time about surprising each other with an album. And since this is a segue for me out of Steely Dan going into an album that Steve and I were going to do, we show it to each other and we don't know what we're bringing to them. So Steve has a record that he wants to show me too, but I'm going to show him this one. And this one here is
Ah, David
it,
Crosby.
yes, and this is UHQR as well.
Really?
Yeah, it
So that's a
doesn't.
single album,
No,
32
no,
and a third?
it's double. It's
Oh, okay.
45 RPM like the
And
Steely
how
Dan.
much was that one?
This one goes for like 60.
That's all? That's all it cost?
Yeah, yeah,
Really? Wow.
and the fidelity on this is just totally amazing. And
Wow.
this is David Crosby's first solo album, was done at a time when Serendipity was, you know, down the hallway, when they were at Wally Hyder's studio in San Francisco. He's recording this. The Airplane were just wrapping up Volunteers. The Grateful Dead was just wrapping up American Beauty. And thus, if you look at all the people that are on this record, it's a combination of everybody in those two bands, including, you probably can't see that, but it's,
Just pull it back more. You can see there's so many different people on it.
yeah, and they're all personnel from all three of them, their bands,
Yeah.
including Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So this is my favorite. It's always been my favorite. I love the sound quality of this when this came out on Atlantic Records in 1971, and this is just blows you away. The
Yeah,
sound
I
is
love that. That's David Crosby's debut album, if I could only remember my name.
right.
Probably
That's
his
it.
best solo album,
Oh,
I would.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So since we're running out of time, what do you have, Steve?
Well, it's interesting.
Tell the studio audience just what he's go ahead.
You picked two American albums from American artists, solo solo artists, and of course, what I do is I pick two British ones. Um, so we did Brian Auger last time with an A.
Mhm.
So this time I picked the Bee Gees with a
Ah,
B, Odessa.
what a great
And
album.
right away, all the serious record collectors out there, the crate diggers, are going, oh no, that's not the original one with the felt, on the label. It was all like felt or whatever that material. This is just cardboard. I'm really sorry. They're all cringing out there. The real serious,
Mm.
music collectors. But this was the Bee Gees' sixth album.
Released in
Okay.
1970.
Yeah. And there's so many people who know the Bee Gees as the Saturday Night Fever, disco
Oh
Bee
yeah.
Gees. They don't realize that the albums that they made in the 60s are truly extraordinary. Their first album, is just it's a gem from 1967. All of their albums in the 60s are just incredible. When this first came out, it was not well received. But over the years, it's really become to be recognized as their best album of the 60s. And it is a double album too. And it's sort of a concept. I'll try to see if I can just hold this. It's not the most interesting gatefold on the inside. It's another one that's like this.
Right,
It's
right,
not
like the
like that
last
just
one.
that just happened like that.
And look at
This is
that
also
picture.
on Atlantic.
Lower that just a little bit. Just to lower just a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
right there. Look at that picture, folks.
yeah,
That's what was happening in 1970
yeah.
in music. What a great
So
album that is.
this is a great, and this is, again, this is an American release. Um, it's on here. I'm just going to show this. I'm just going
It
to do
used
it
to
in
be
the
on
light.
Atco, wasn't it on
Yeah,
Atco?
yeah. But this was the American. It was on Atco. I think it was Polydor, and
Right, right,
this
right.
is an original Atco label.
Hmm.
And, again, everybody out there who's a serious, serious collector will have that in that fuzzy felt velour, whatever it was.
Right,
And
right.
of course, it gets wrecked over the years because it's shoved in with all the other records and it
Like we
faded.
did while we were listening to it. Yeah, I get it.
But this is just an amazing listen. I mean, it just to show you the depth of their vocal arrangements and songwriting and the musicianship, the production. It's stunning to listen to this all the way through. It is one of the greatest double albums of the 60s. I don't think there's any question about it, you know.
Right. And I'm just going to say it. It's before they sold out. And a lot of people liked what they did with all the disco stuff and everything. But if you want to hear like a true band that, the stuff that record will just floor you. You'll go, how did they get from that to, to what they were doing 5 years later? I mean,
Yeah.
and everybody has their journeys and stories. So
Right.
we're
Everybody
at
has
it.
their opinion too.
Right.
The one
Exactly.
song on this that people might know is a song called Melody Fair,
Hmm.
if I'm saying that correctly.
And I played Marley Purt Drive from there about
Right.
weeks ago.
That's a real deep FM cut. If you're
Yeah, it's a
listening to
great
FM
song.
radio at
The,
that time.
the first time I heard that, I heard Lulu doing a cover of that from, I don't know when it was. I think it was from the To Sir With Love album that she had put out. And I found that song on there. And I didn't know that they had written that. And then I stumbled upon that version of it that the Bee Gees wrote years later. And it's like, wow.
And
No
she
wonder
was
this.
married to Morris or Robin. I
Oh, there you
forget.
go. Okay.
Morris, I think she was married to. This is 1969, not 1970.
Oh,
I
I thought
just
that came out in 70.
I
Okay.
just checked right here. It
Okay.
says
Okay.
19 because when you said it, I was like, is that right? And then I remember, no, that's
Okay.
1969. Yeah,
Okay.
this was their last album of the 60s. What's interesting, I know I'm going to cheat here for a minute, but actually the next album was an album that was not both, not all three Bee Gees. I know I'm cheating here.
Yeah, I have that
It's
one.
like it's a
Hmm.
bonus. This is called
Cucumber Castle.
Cucumber Castle.
Yes, that's an
Okay, and it's
interesting record.
just Barry and Morris. I know it's spelt Maurice, but he pronounced it Morris.
Hmm.
And it's just the two. And there's a film of this. There's a companion movie that comes with this. Not comes with it, but is out there. And it's just incredible if you look at this. And I know I'm cheating, Fred. I'm doing
Yes.
two here.
Right,
So
right.
there would be a period. They almost broke up. So there would be a period after Odessa before their next album. There would be, this
Hmm.
this kind of period of transition,
Right.
so to speak.
Okay.
So I'm
Well, we're
sorry
at
for
it.
cheating.
We're out of time 3 minutes ago.
All right, so what we're going to do, our last thing, we're just going to give just this is something we'll be doing coming up soon, at some point. And again, this is another one I have not had a
Oh, we
chance to
got to
get
tell them
into
to
this.
like this too. Don't we have to do that too? Yes.
Yes, make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Anything we got wrong, we would love it if you say, oh, we like you guys and you're nice guys and everything, but that was wrong what you said. We appreciate that because we're here to learn too. That's why we do this. So make sure you listen to FM Odyssey on the radio.
FM
So again,
Odyssey, fmodyssey.com is where you can go and you can hear archives there as well.
yeah. So another one again, they're coming so fast and furious. I haven't had a chance to crack this little baby open yet, but this is the new Bob Dylan. Okay. This is the bootleg series, volume 18, 1956 to 1963 through the open window. This is the 4 LP set. This is they're calling this a sampler. Okay.
Right. And we're going to talk
There's
about
an
that next
8
time.
CD edition. So
Right.
at some point upcoming, we'll talk about that. And
Okay.
this other one that's a companion, not a companion, but is also out there. It's called Dylan Circle, and this is artists from Elektra Records who are in and around that period. It's a double album. It's Jack Holzman supervised this, and this is another one we'll be talking about in the weeks and the months to come.
All right. Well, I think that wraps it up. I hope you got all that. As I sometimes say, education through a fire hose. A lot of information in this last one, but please tell your friends about these little things that Steve and I are doing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And please listen to FM Odyssey, fmodyssey.com. You can listen to on Sunday mornings live. And also, there's archives of all of the shows, and it's a theme driven show that, well, you got to listen. That's all I'm going to say.
You gotta listen.
It's
No
very
question
different,
about it.
and we must be doing something wrong because it's been on for 35 years. So I'll just leave it at that.
Keep
Steve,
up the good work.
As usual, thank you for being here with me today, and everybody else out there. Hug each other and love each other because we really need to be doing that now. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
and have a good, wonderful time until next time.
We'll see you next time.